Welcome to Insight Ophthalmology. This is Dr. Amrit welcoming you to another important lecture on slit lamp. Today we are discussing the retroillumination and the sclerotic scatter. So first of all, let us discuss what is retroillumination. Whenever the object of interest is illuminated indirectly from the light reflected by the structures behind it, it is called retroillumination. So, in simple words, what I mean to say is if you want to look at a structure over here, rather than putting the light directly at that structure and viewing it, you are going to put light somewhere behind or at the structures which are present behind this object to be viewed, and the reflected light is going to illuminate this object from behind, and therefore because the object of interest is getting illuminated from behind, this is called retroillumination. Now you can obtain retroillumination from the iris. That means you can put the light from on the iris and then observe on the cornea, or you can put the light on the lens and then observe the structure present on the cornea, or you can put the light on the retina or on the fundus and then observe the structures which are present either on the lens or on the cornea. So based on where you are putting light and how you are putting light, different types of retroillumination are there. So, in this first picture, you can see that the object of interest is present over here on the cornea. So, the viewing system is directed onto the cornea, whereas the illumination system, as you can see, is putting light directly onto the iris, which is situated exactly behind this opacity on the cornea. And the light will then get reflected back from the iris, and with this reflected light, the object on the cornea will get illuminated, right? So this is called direct iris retroillumination because we are putting the illuminating light directly behind the object of interest. However, in the second picture, you can see that the object of interest is located over here, whereas the light is not put directly behind this, that means on the lens, but we are putting it somewhere here on the iris. Okay, so when the light is not projected directly behind the object of interest, it is called indirect iris retroillumination. Now, again, what we can do is we can get retroillumination even from the fundus, that means from the retina. So we can project the light back onto the retina, and from the reflected light coming back from the retina, we can observe the structures which are present on the lens or on the cornea. Now, in this first picture, you can see that the entire lens is visible. That means this pupil is actually dilated. Now, in a dilated pupil, if we project the light from the eccentric or from the from the periphery of the pupil, and then we observe the reflected light rays coming from the retina, you can see the entire details of the lens and the cornea. So such a retroillumination from the fundus in a dilated pupil is usually done to examine the lens structures in toto. However, if we carry out retroillumination from the fundus with an undilated pupil, so what will happen in an undilated pupil is that the pupil will be small and you can see the iris details like this, and behind the pupil is your lens. So when you project the light like this onto the fundus through an undilated pupil, you will see greater details of the iris from the reflected light coming from the retina. So such a method is called iris transillumination. So don't worry what are all these. I will be explaining about each of them individually now. So, what is meant by direct retroillumination from iris? As I told you, in direct retroillumination, we are directly putting the light behind the object of interest, or what I mean to say is we are directly projecting the light on the iris, which is situated behind this object of interest. So, how do you do it? You take a moderately thin slit lamp beam and then direct it at an angle of 45 degrees. That means the angle between the illumination and the observer system should be 45. Okay, and the plane of focus will be obviously at the level where you want to observe. So at this level, in this picture you're trying to observe on the cornea, so the plane of focus will be on the cornea, right? So what happens in direct retroillumination is that soft reflected beam that we get from the iris will actually help you to see the transparent corneal irregularities more clearly. So such sometimes very subtle abnormalities might be present on the cornea, which is very difficult to see with the diffuse illumination. So such opacities can be easily viewed using the direct retroillumination from the iris. So as you can see in this picture, this is a very subtle epithelial defect, okay, or maybe a ruptured bulle. Now, such an epithelial defect might be actually missed very easily on a diffuse illumination. So you can use a direct retroillumination from the iris. As you can see from here, the light is coming. This is the reflected light from the iris and making this epithelial defect more obvious. Now, what about the indirect retroillumination from the iris? As I told you, the observed structure is not directly in the path of reflected light. The reflected light is coming from here and the structure is here. So we are not putting the light here somewhere. We are putting it away from the object of interest. So what happens is that because the light is getting reflected here and the object is present here, you are going to see the object of interest against a dark background. So when you see that, what happens is that you will get a much better contrast against a dark background. So let me explain it to you with a picture. So in this first picture, you can see that the object of interest is located somewhere here and we have projected the light beam on the iris somewhere here. So definitely the object will now be viewed against a dark background of the pupil. So what happens when you see an object against a dark background is you will get better contrast details, because of which identification of the opacity or any other object might be much easier. So that's the funda behind the indirect retroillumination of the iris. Now, this indirect retroillumination of the iris is used for a lot of purposes. It is used to detect the vascularization of the cornea, sometimes epithelial edema, which might be missed on a diffuse illumination. That can be made out using the indirect illumination from the iris. Then small cysts on the cornea, vacuoles, corneal dystrophies. Then again, when we go to the lens, crystalline lens deposits can also be seen using this, and contact lens deposits. In this picture, you can see the superficial vascularization, and the superficial vessel over here is showing a much better contrast because of the indirect retroillumination. You can see the light is actually put over here, and that light is actually reflecting indirectly and illuminating this surface. Okay. Now again here, you can see this picture. This is actually nothing but corneal verticillata, also called the vortex keratopathy. Now here, this vortex keratopathy is somewhat whitish in color, and you can see that it is more visible against the dark background of the cornea. However, if it were to be located here, it would be actually missed because of the light and the verticillata sharing the same color. So this is also an example of indirect iris retroillumination, where you're putting the light on the iris like this, and adjacent to that there's a dark background area, and in that dark background area you are going to see the verticillata. Again, over here in this picture, you can see some part of it is getting illuminated directly from the light source. This is direct retroillumination, and this part over here is much more visible against the dark background, and this is the indirect retroillumination from the iris. Again, pigment dusting can also be seen on the cornea more easily in the indirect retroillumination from the iris. Again, this picture shows you the KPs. Obviously, here you have a cataract, and that cataract, which is white in color, is giving you a better contrast. However, in many cases, when it is very difficult to look for fine stellate KPs, okay, you might miss them on a diffuse illumination. In such cases, indirect iris retroillumination might help you to look at those fine subtle KPs on cornea. In the second picture, you can see these are the subepithelial infiltrates. So these also are more visible while doing this maneuver. Now, what about when you get the reflected beams from the fundus or from the retina? So that is called the direct retroillumination from the fundus. Okay, so what you are getting over here is the red reflex which comes from the fundus or the fundal glow. Okay, in order to carry out this direct retroillumination from the fundus, the system is usually paraxial or axial. Okay, so I will tell you what is meant by paraxial or axial. The illumination system, which is here, and the viewing system are almost in the same line. Okay, if they're exactly right behind each other, that is called an axial illumination. And if they are slightly offset with each other, about 10 degrees or so, that is called a paraxial illumination. So for a direct retroillumination from fundus, it is very important to have this axial or paraxial illumination. Okay, and the pupil is usually dilated, and you are going to project the light from one side of the pupil and let it get reflected from the retina in such a way that it will actually illuminate the iris and the cornea. I will give you more details about the iris and the cornea. Now, just like the specular reflection, it is also a monoocular method. That means the retroillumination, or that fundal glow that you see, will be visible only in one of your binoculars. So you often need to close one eye to observe that which ocular is actually showing you the retroillumination from the fundus. So what I mean by the axial illumination is that, so this is the illumination system and this is the viewing system. So these both should be approximately in the same line in order to carry out a retroillumination from the fundus. Now in the second picture, they're almost in the same line. Okay, so this is here and this is here, they're almost parallel to each other, and this is axial illumination for retro illumination from the fundus. Now, sometimes it might be difficult, the glow might not be enough. So, how can you actually enhance the glow? The retroillumination can be enhanced further by asking the patient to look nasally. So, what happens is when the patient looks nasally, the light that we are throwing is going to go back onto the optic nerve, and the optic nerve will reflect the beam in a much stronger way compared to the macula or compared to the rest of the retina, and therefore you will get a much brighter retroillumination. So, how do you enhance retroillumination? By asking the patient to look slightly nasally. Okay, so this is how you are going to get a retroillumination in a normal eye, in which the cornea is clear, in which the lens is clear, so you do not have any opacities which will actually disturb your red reflex. However, there are conditions which can be diagnosed using the retroillumination from the retina. So these are the cataracts, corneal scars, transparent cysts, and refractile bodies present on the lens or the cornea. Now in this first picture, just have a look. Here we have a rigid PMMA lens placed, and you can see that here behind the intraocular lens, you can see certain opacities, right? Like this, you can see certain disturbance in the red reflex. This is nothing but the posterior capsular opacities. Okay, so this is an early posterior capsular opacification starting, and that is what is seen on your retroillumination from the retina. Now in the second picture, you can see this is a normal lens, and however here you can see certain opacities coming up on the retroillumination. Okay, you can see the beam is on one side of the pupil, and then from the retina we are getting that back glow, fundal glow. So this picture actually represents a presence of posterior subcapsular opacity, okay, which is opacification of the posterior capsule, or opacification below the posterior capsule of a normal lens. Now in the third picture, you can see this rosette type of opacity, and this is nothing but a rosette cataract, okay, in a patient. In this picture, you can see these opacities are present in a particular zone, and this is zonular cataract. Now, what if you actually carry out the retroillumination in a pupil which is not dilated? Now, in such a case, the light is going to get reflected, and instead of falling only on the lens, it will also fall on the back of the iris, and therefore you will be able to see certain defects in the iris, because wherever there are defects, the light is going to pass through those defects and will be visible as illuminated parts of the iris. So, that type of illumination is called the iris transillumination, in which you can see certain iris transillumination defects. Now, in order to carry out the iris transillumination defect, the system will be again axial or paraxial. However, the beam height should be equal to the height of the pupil. So, if a pupil is this much, the height should be this much. If the pupil is smaller, the height should also be smaller. The reason is that if you take a longer beam than the pupil, there will be more reflection from coming up to your oculars from the iris itself, and the light might not be able to reach the retina, and that way it will be very difficult for you to observe those trans illuminated areas on the iris. Now, where do we use it? We use it basically to assess the degree of iris thinning, and this iris thinning and iris defects are seen in ocular albinism, and they're also seen in pigmentary glaucoma. Apart from that, it can also be used to test the patency of a peripheral iridotomy. Now have a look at this picture. The pupil is not dilated. You can see these are the iris, and the light is thrown to the center of the pupil, getting reflected from the retina and then passing through this iris. Now if the iris was normal, you will see a black color reflects and only the central part of the pupil will be glowing. However, in this case, because there are certain thinned out areas of the iris, also called the iris atrophic patches or the iris defects, what will happen is that these areas will actually will let the light pass through them, and therefore they will look at this orangish illuminated areas, and this is called the iris transillumination defects. In this picture, however, you can see almost the entire iris is getting illuminated. This is actually a case of albinism in which you do not have those pigments present in the iris, and therefore the entire iris is allowing the light to pass through it. Now, as I told you, it can also be used to test the patency of peripheral iridotomy. Now, in the first picture, you can see that there are two holes over here, probably the peripheral iridotomies, but we do not know whether they are patent or not. If they are patent, they are going to allow the passage of light in iris transillumination. So you can see in the second picture, when we carry out this iris transillumination through that small pupil by putting a light of equal height of that of pupil, we can see the light coming out through these patent iridotomies, and they are getting illuminated like this. That means these are patent iridotomies. After retroillumination, we have the sclerotic scatter. So what is meant by sclerotic scatter? Sclerotic scatter is actually an indirect type of illumination. That means again we are putting light somewhere and we are observing light at another place. Okay, we are observing the structures located at a different place from at which we are putting the light. So the sclerotic scatter is based on the principle of total internal reflection. Now I have told you what is total internal reflection on my video on gonioscopy. So how do you achieve a total internal reflection, or how do you achieve a sclerotic scatter? Here, first we are supposed to decenter the slit beam. By decentering, I mean you're supposed to turn the knob which is situated at the base of the illumination system, which is also called a decoupling knob on the slit lamp, because this is a type of indirect type of illumination. That's why you need to decouple the slit lamp. So first you do that, and then you put a broad beam of light on the temporal side of the sclera or at the temporal limbus. Okay. So now what happens is, normally when you put or direct the light at the temporal limbus, the light which is falling on the limbus is going to get reflected internally from the endothelium, epithelium, endothelium, epithelium, and again from epithelium to endothelium like this. And then it is going to come out from the nasal limbus or from the opposite limbus. So this is called a sclerotic scatter or total internal reflection. So what happens because of this total internal reflection is that you are going to see a limbal ring which is nicely glowing, and inside the cornea will be visible as a dark structure. Okay, so total internal reflection, as I told you, occurs when you direct a light source at one limbus, and that light is going to undergo total internal reflection like this and then come out from the opposite limbus. So during that process, what you achieve or what you see on a slit lamp is this glowing ring like this around the iris and around the cornea, and the cornea itself will be totally black in color. And this is what happens in a normal cornea. Okay, a normal cornea means it's a clear cornea, there are no opacities present in this, and therefore you're getting a nice sclerotic scatter ring without any breakage of the ring. However, sometimes if there is some corneal opacity like this present on the cornea, the light which is getting totally internally reflected will now be made to scatter because of this opacity, right? So corneal opacity will halt and scatter the light which is passing through the cornea, and in such a way what will happen is that the corneal opacity will get better highlighted. Okay, so the soft indirect light which is coming from this sclerotic scatter will help you to detect very subtle corneal changes like corneal scarring, vortex dystrophies, and crystalline keratopathies. Now over here in this picture you can see this corneal opacities which are getting highlighted. This is actually a case of map and dot dystrophy. Again, in this picture you can see the sclerotic scatter is actually highlighting all the structures, and you can see the scleral ring, the ring which was supposed to come in a sclerotic scatter is quite dim in this type of picture, because there are so many opacities which are present on the cornea which are causing scattering of that light which we have put on the temporal limbus. So this is actually a picture of granular dystrophy. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.